Welcome to WonderWoman Wednesdays. They say that everyone tells a story about themselves inside their own head, always, all the time. And that story makes you what you are. We build ourselves out of that story. Today's guest, Nandini Nagpal, is actually a professional storyteller and a passionate one at that. She is a mindfulness educator and a positive psychology practitioner. Welcome, Nandini.
Hi, Mandeep. Thank you for inviting me. It is so lovely to be here.
Yes, it's so lovely to reconnect with you. I was very curious to start. What stage in your life did you start storytelling as a profession?
Well, storytelling as a profession began in 2011. And I remember the moment I attended an international storytelling festival in Singapore. And before that, I was just telling stories in a workshop as part of some workshops. But that was the first time I saw storytelling as an art form. And when I sat there in that audience, I cannot forget what I went through when I saw those storytellers on stage. And that is the day I decided that I want to become a storyteller. And so I joined the Storytelling Association of Singapore as an associate member and worked my way up, building my repertoire of stories.
And you were also a vice president with them, right?
Yes. So I worked my way up, building my repertoire and, working my way up to being a professional member. The standards are quite high. So, working towards that. And of course, along the way, you start telling stories professionally because you want to build yourself up to that. So it's been a few years.
I just wanted to ask you that, people are these days, it's very common for all of them to write in the corporate world or otherwise that I'm a storyteller. That's become a famous title. There seems to be a suddenly rise of these people. Now, you belong to a professional association of these in Southeast Asia, in Singapore. What do you have to say to this?
There's definitely been a surge in storytellers, and I've seen that a lot more in India in recent years. Organizational storytelling has also picked up a lot. And yes, storytellers are everywhere, I think, and people aspiring to be professional storytellers or just people telling at festivals. I think India has huge potential anyway, because every place has a festival, every state has got its own set of stories. So just within India, there is so much. So yes, I mean, there has been a surge of storytellers. But I think it's fantastic because I think it's about time stories were recognized. It's about time.
I wanted to ask you how much of Nandini hides in each of the stories that you care to share?
um, well, when it comes, every story, there's always a little bit of you because we have to connect with the stories. So if the story doesn't resonate with me, if I don't like the story, then it won't really come out very well. I won't be connected to it. So it won't be an authentic story. So for every story, there has to be a little bit of me in it. But the stories where I work a lot on bringing myself in is stories for adult audiences because those stories, first of all, they're longer, they're deeper, there are more layers to it. So there's a lot more internalization that happens. Of course, internalization happens with every story that I tell. But when it comes to stories for adult audiences, because there are so many layers and so many facets in that story, there's a lot more reflection that I usually put in those stories.
I must share with our members that Nandini actually shares stories with not just with adults, with teenagers, with children, in public and private events, which are obviously ticketed. And she also does work for school, for value education, and is obviously invited in corporates and also has done radio shows and is quoted in articles throughout Singapore. So the amount that you read and the fact that she's part of professional associations is something amazing, Nandini. Unique things that you think is about this profession which you don't think other professions have?
Maybe other professions have it too, but I think that the thing that stands out about storytelling for me is its versatility. And the reason I say that is because storytelling is something that can be a performing art, and yet it can be plugged into so many other spaces, like in education, in organizations, just at home. right? For sharing values if people want to. Um, for healing, you have metaphoric stories.
Yes.
And in my counseling recently, I did almost half my assessment was about metaphoric storytelling in play therapy.
Okay.
So it was fascinating, really fascinating.
I love the fact that you have made a foray into areas which have so nicely blended into storytelling, Nandini. Hats off to you. Positive psychology and getting into mindfulness, being into education. Please tell us something about that.
So mindfulness and storytelling for me somehow sit together at some point. And I believe stories heal. So positive psychology, mindfulness, storytelling, for me, they all sit together. And that is why my workshops blend all the three areas together. And I think that's the unique thing about what I'm doing is I bring them all together.
All together. Yeah, that's really fantastic, and I can see that you are inculcating those things in your children, and that's why you're a proud mom.
I hope so.
No, I saw some drawings of your daughter, I think, and I realized that I think telling a story, drawing it out, everything is it's creativity at large in your household. I can see that. Anyway, I wanted
I must add, my children are my biggest critics when
okay.
it comes to my stories, and my husband and my children, they are my biggest critics. And it is so useful to have a good critical audience.
That's true.
And yeah, I have to thank them for that.
I think as working women, it is always good if you have that thing because that's also they're your largest cheerleaders and supporters. So if you have that critical inputs from them as well, you go out feeling much stronger, and
Absolutely.
that's really nice. I wanted you to give a message to our WiP members.
I would love to give a message to the WIP members. And I think that message sounds very obvious, but it is needed, and it is to please tell stories. Please tell stories wherever you can, and please awaken that storyteller in you because we are all storytellers. We are storytelling beings, and we are the stories we tell to ourselves and to the world. So please do tell stories, and you don't have to be a professional. You can really start with an object in your home that has value for you. Even that can be a story or a seed for a story.
I'm not going to let you get away so easy. So I was planning to ask you which are your favorite stories, and just now while I'm listening to you, the thought crossed my mind that why don't I have you tell a story to our all our members, and they would really love it. So why don't you tell us a short story which everyone can enjoy?
Sure, I would love to tell a story. I have too many favorites, uh,
Okay,
but let me tell you a very short one, keeping time in mind.
pick your pick. Yes.
Okay. So this is a story of Mullah Nasruddin, and stories of Nasruddin come from the Middle East, but of course they're famous all over the world. So are you ready? Okay. Mullah Nasruddin used to cross the border. He used to cross the border with a donkey, and the donkey was burdened with two big bundles of straw. Now, whenever he reached the border control, the inspector at the border control would eye Nasruddin very suspiciously. He would scan him from top to bottom, and he would look at those bundles of straw. And he knew Nasruddin was hiding something in those bundles of straw. He wondered if they were gems or jewels. So he looked at Nasruddin and said, I need to check you, and I need to check those bundles of straw. Mullah Nasruddin happily agreed. So the inspector and his team undid the bundles of straw, and as you can imagine, there was straw everywhere, up in the air, down the ground. It was such a mess, but they found nothing. And so Mullah Nasruddin had to pack up his bundle of straw again, and the inspector very grudgingly allowed him to cross the border. The next time, the same thing happened. The inspector looked at him, looked at the bundle of straw, and said he wanted to check. He opened the bundle of straw and checked everything, but he found absolutely nothing. And yet again, grudgingly, he let Nasruddin go by. The third time, The same thing happened. Now, time went by, and every time this would happen, months turned into years, and 10 years went by. After 10 years, the inspector had to retire. But even after he retired, he couldn't forget Nasruddin. He knew that man was hiding something in those bundles of straw. And he wished he had checked more thoroughly. He wished he had checked maybe in the mouth of the donkey or maybe under the tail of the donkey, for smugglers hide something somewhere. He just couldn't forget Nasruddin. And it was disconcerting, it was troubling him. One day, as he was walking down the marketplace, he saw a familiar face. Aha! It was Nasruddin himself. He quickly walked up to Nasruddin and tapped him on his shoulder. Nasruddin turned around, and the inspector greeted him and said, "Do you remember me? I was the inspector at the border." Nasruddin greeted him and smiled. Of course, how could he forget the inspector? "Come now, my friend. Tell me, what were you smuggling? I'm a retired man now, so there's not much I can do to you anyway. Tell me, Nasruddin, what were you smuggling? Were you smuggling anything at all?" Nasruddin smiled, and he nodded, and he looked into the inspector's eyes. And then he looked left, and he looked right. And he came closer, and he whispered in the inspector's ears, "Donkeys."
That's a really very, very nice and light-hearted one. Thank you. Just what we needed today. Thank you so much for cheering us up with this story.
No problem. It's an absolute pleasure.
I just wanted to say that we all have some favorite kinds of stories. In this time of COVID-19, which is the mortal enemy at this point in time, I love the stories that no matter what and how much the evil is, victory will be of the good one. And in that thing, the protagonist always in our stories were always of people who had courage, who had strength, who had fearlessness, who had faith, and who had perseverance. So today, I think that's all that we need to continuously go on into that. And as far as my guest, I can say that great stories happen to those who can tell them. So, Nandini, pleasure to have you with us. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye, Mandeep.
Bye-bye.
Hi, my name is Nandini Nagpal. I'm a mindfulness educator and coach. I'm a storyteller, and I'm a positive psychology practitioner. I tell stories and I teach mindfulness and positive psychology to all ages: children, teenagers, adults, teachers, parents. You can find all my details on my website and my social media handles. The details will be in the comments. Thank you.